Hello and welcome to Middlesex Moments, the radio program from Middlesex Community College in Middletown, Meriden, on the Shoreline, and online. I'm Stephen Minkler, Academic Dean at the college, sitting in today for our President, Anna Wasesha. My guest today is Clarissa Gerber. Claire is an artist and a member of the part-time faculty at Middlesex Community College, and currently she has an exhibit of her portrait paintings on display in the Pegasus Gallery, located in the Chapman Hall building on our Middletown campus. Claire's portrait paintings address the complex underpinnings of identity, emotional presence, and of human psychology. Dynamic color relationships and closely cropped compositions contain and defy the descriptive physicality of individual subjects. Her broad brushstrokes, stark color contrasts, and spatially deviant background settings offer readings of emotive states of mind and brewing interior narratives. It's my pleasure to have you join us today, Claire. Thanks for coming.
It's great to be here.
I think it'd be nice for the listeners to know that we are actually sitting in the Pegasus Gallery today, so even though this is a radio show and they can't see what we're seeing, just a quick description is we are surrounded by 9 portraits that Claire has offered for this exhibit, about 3 feet by 5 foot with very vivid colors. And I'm just kind of curious how you initially got into choosing painting as your art medium, and what about color really strikes out to you in as your role as an artist?
Well, I've always been interested in art, and when I studied art at Alfred University, it wasn't until my last semester at school that I actually decided to concentrate in painting. But I have been always interested in color, especially intense color, and also with portraying the human form. And that's something when I went to graduate school at Michigan State University was where I really fell in love with painting there, and just all the different properties of paint, using different mediums, and using both the palette knife and paintbrush to create my work.
Now, the subjects that we see in these paintings in the gallery are these people that you know in your life, and how do they particularly inspire you to make a painting of them?
Mm-hmm. All the subjects in my work are people that I know. They can be family members or friends or members of the community. And that's something that's important to me, that when I work with them, to have some sort of knowledge or relationship with my model. And when I start my work, I work primarily from photographs. And I will do long photo sessions with my models where it'll be hundreds of photographs taken, and I'll have them in different settings with different props. And I'm interested in my current work with ideas of identity, both of how we shape our own identity and also how society influences our identity. So within these photo sessions, I will be talking to my model about elements of their lives that have influenced them, and also putting them into different roles and playing with the different props or different outfits that they're wearing. I'm also interested in the emotional content of both of individuals, and then how that can be expressed to the viewer through the mode of painting.
In some ways, it seems that you're trying to help tell a story about that person through the medium of visual art. So connecting the subject with the viewer through the work that you've done.
I would say in my work it's both trying to tell a story about the individual, but also how it relates to the viewer who's experiencing the work. In a way, all of my paintings are also self-portraits, where they're coming from me and they're telling something about myself. But I'd like to have the works be both open enough that the viewer can interpret them in ways, take their own experiences, past experiences, and how that changes how they feel or think when they're looking at the work. But they also have a connection to the individual model and expressing something about them.
Okay, great. So after a short break, we'll be back to talk a little bit more about some of the specific paintings on display here at Middlesex Community College. Again, our guest today is Clarissa Gerber. This is Middlesex Moments. Welcome back to Middlesex Moments. I'm Stephen Minkler, and my guest today is Clarissa Gerber. And we're in the Pegasus Gallery at the college, and we're looking at an exhibit of portrait paintings that Claire has put on display here at the college, and discussing some of the concepts and techniques that went into these portraits. And Claire, I noticed that a couple of them, if I'm looking at the names of the pictures, all involve a person named Allie. This is someone you know, but I see her in multiple pictures. Tell us what that's about.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said earlier, all of the works are people that I know, and Allie was a good friend of mine from back from childhood to present day. And in my recent work, I've been completing series with the same model in different poses. So in this particular exhibition, I have Allie in summer and Allie in winter. I actually have the 4 seasons of Allie, therefore, in this particular series of paintings. And in these works, I worked with Allie in putting her into different scenarios and trying to have different emotional content within the different works. So in Allie in summer, the work depicts Allie fallen. It's semi-humorous work. She's fallen asleep in her bikini, sunbathing, and she's got a can of Coke in her hand. It's reminiscent of the Dwayne Hansen sculpture that's at the Wadsworth Athenaeum in Hartford, and it's having this kind of the intense reds of the piece, trying to express just that she's almost not just that she's burning in the sun, but more that she's being absorbed by the heat of the composition. And in contrasting that, Allie in winter is also has a humorous element, at least to me, because I find Allie to be, she has a kind of deadpan way of presenting humor, and it has where she's sitting outside in her, short shorts and flip flops, but she has a Christmas hat, Santa hat on, and she has this kind of kitschy Christmas decoration that says "Ring in the Cheer," and she has this really deadpan expression. So having this juxtaposition of having what kind of mood you get from the work, and then the surroundings of the piece. And with these, I'm also really interested in the process of painting. So I'll have the idea behind the paintings, but when I actually get into painting, a lot of it will be about the dialogue, speaking back and forth between me and the painting as I work, and just working with different kind of mark making. So in Allie in summer, there's a lot of both really tight mark making and pattern, but also very large gross marks where you have just that's one swipe of the paintbrush, and having that sense of contrast within a singular work.
Now, you described the general color palette for Allie in summer as being almost related to heat in some ways. There are lots of reds and oranges and broad brush strokes there, but how did you go about selecting the color palette for Allie in winter? It's definitely not the same red and orange shadings that you see in that picture.
Well, when I'm looking at color, and I am interested in intense color, but I'm also looking at color in terms of the 3 properties of color. And I've taught color and design, and that's always been a part of my teaching and teaching painting, looking at color relationships. So in Allie in winter, I was also looking at just how you can use color to bring shapes and objects forward and back into space. So the figure of Allie is made to come forward by having both more intense colors and also having some lighter values. Whereas I work back into the background, which becomes more of an abstract space there. I think you can usually tell that it looks like it's outside, but it becomes actually like color fields. And the colors become still lots of different colors, but they become a little bit neutralized, so a little bit duller. And that's helping to make the actual figure of Allie come forward in space. So when I'm working, I'm thinking about colors in that formal sense and how they relate, simultaneous contrast, having 2 intense complementary colors next to each other so that they start to vibrate, and also looking at how colors can affect you emotionally.
Okay. Well, and on that note, there is another painting in this exhibit that has very muted colors, and maybe if you can describe something of that painting, maybe the subject that's in the painting, and why you chose a more muted palette.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's 2 in the show that actually have the muted palette. And first to talk about Frozen Mari. In this work, it's a very neutralized palette. It's not just grayscale, but everything is very calmed down. A little bit of a blue theme in that work. And in that one, actually, where Allie in summer refers to the sense of heat, Frozen Mari is all about being frozen, being cold. And in that work, I created this painting while I was teaching at Kutztown University of Pennsylvania in Kutztown, and I was working in this my studio was in a garage that was just freezing cold, middle of winter, lots of snow, just like we've been having here recently, and it was just so cold painting. So in part, I was trying to embody this feeling of being frozen from my own experience of feeling really cold while painting, but also within the figure, having there be some of the exaggerations of proportions and just and the coloration within Mari's form, trying to have this embodiment of being frozen. So that could be physically frozen, but also psychologically frozen or emotionally frozen. And this is a work that's interesting when I talk to people who have viewed the work, well, they'll have different interpretations for it. And that's something that I am interested in, because there could be the ideas that I'm thinking of when I paint, but I've had students of mine see it in very different ways depending upon their background experiences. And that's something that's great within the arts, of how we bring ourselves to the work.
There's also another portrait here that you've done, which I can't read the description from the distance, but it looks like a person that's holding a guitar aimed downward. And so what is that maybe representing in that picture?
This painting is Libby at 8 o'clock. And this is actually the first series where I worked with the same model for multiple paintings. Libby is a friend of mine from my undergraduate years at Alfred. And it's a little bit of a looser painting where the background's very abstract and there's more abstraction within the figure. And that's something formally that I like to play with in my works, of having both volume and flatness, and having both representation and abstraction, so that you can tell what's depicted in the work, but that it's not it's not supposed to be like a photograph. And this work, it's very cool. It's also a very cool, more intense colors than in Frozen Mari, and just there's a mood. There's kind of a more of a melancholic mood, but also it was kind of, when I actually was working with Libby and doing the photo session, part of it was just this joke of that, her husband had this guitar and he was learning to play, but Libby didn't really know how to play the guitar. So we kind of worked out this idea to have it that she's holding it upside down. So she's trying to play the guitar, but she's not quite getting it right. But then just playing again with the wide brush marks, where here the fingers are just one brush stroke going through, and having it just be a mood and still having that openness to the viewer.
Now, most of the portraits that are hanging in this exhibit are of adults, but I do see one of a toddler. And is this a member of your family?
Mm-hmm. That's my niece, Amelia. And in this work, it's hard to do photo sessions with, I'm not even sure if she was 2 years old when I worked with her in the photographs. But it's something I'm playing with, how you depict children in art, and how there's the kind of typical idea of having the cute little kids, and I wanted to show in this work some of the intensity that's in a child, even when they have what they want or when they don't have what they want and they're upset. So having very intense orange colors within her skin tones, and with this composition, it both has some of the primary and secondary colors that you'll see in a lot of toys for children, but also just playing with that mixed with neutral tones too. And in the painting, she's depicted sitting on one of her toys that she's not supposed to sit on. So it's also something about having your own, even as a child, having your own desires of what you want to do, and maybe it's not what your parents want you to do.
Now, you described the process a little earlier as doing a photo shoot with your subjects. So would seem like a pretty extensive photo shoot. About how many pictures do you take before you decide to settle on the fact that you've done with that, and then you're ready to move on to the painting process?
It depends on the painting and on the model as well. I sometimes have a very clear image. If I want to have a composition that looks something like this, then the photos can go quicker. I still take a lot. I could take over 300 photos. Digital, it's easy to do with a model. Sometimes I'm not exactly sure, so it's more, I may have the right setting, but I want to have us try for different angles, different lighting, and that's something that I'm interested in. In my most recent work in this exhibition, which is Erin Alone, I almost called her Nair, is my nickname for Erin backwards. But Erin Alone, this is a work that I just completed this past year in 2014. And in this work, I did a long photo session with Erin, but I'm trying to bring back the emotional content into my work, and having that be something that becomes a little bit more forceful than I have in some of the past couple years of work. And so when I did the photo session, I actually had a dialogue with Erin, asking her about experiences she's had either from a long time ago or recently that have affected her, or something that's very memorable for her, and using that dialogue to help create the painting. So in Erin Alone, she's depicted she's sitting down and she's just kind of balled up. She's holding her arms tightly, holding her knees up to her, and she's down in this very gray space. It's a very neutralized palette with there's more of a bright color behind her. And it's this idea of just her feeling isolated, and through dialogue with her, how she's felt in her life that she has either having trouble connecting to other people, or being able to be someone that just feeling alone. And something in Erin's life, she has a mild form of autism, which has made it hard for her to actually recognize faces and to get to know people. So that's something that was part of the story, her story, that I wanted to put into the work. But also, again, have it be open to interpretation, where she's there, she seems alone. It's the one painting where she's not looking at you, looking at the viewer, but that she still has the strength of how she's holding herself, and that there's, can be strength in even if you do feel isolated.
All right, the exhibit is called Figurative Color by Clarissa Gerber, on display now at Middlesex Community College in our Pegasus Gallery and in the Niche. And we invite you to stop by our campus in Middletown to actually see the exhibit in person. We'll be back after a short break. We'll talk more just to finish up our discussion about the portraits that are hanging here and ask Claire about how she bridges her professional life as an artist into the classroom in her role as an adjunct professor at Middlesex Community College. We'll be back in a moment. This is Middlesex Moments. Welcome back to Middlesex Moments. I'm Stephen Minkler, and my guest today is Clarissa Gerber, whose exhibit Figurative Color is on display in the Pegasus Gallery and the Niche here in our Middletown campus. And we're actually sitting in the Pegasus Gallery. We've been discussing some of the images that are in this on display, large portraits of people with very vibrant color. And I think, Claire, just to kind of conclude our discussion about what we see in this room, what kind of emotional connection might you make while you're actually doing the process of painting, physically putting brush to canvas? Is there some visceral connection that you're making while you're doing this as an artist?
Well, physicality is very important to me in my work, and that can talk both about the physicality of presenting the human form and also just the physical process of painting. It's important to me that my paintings come across as being paintings, so that you can see the process of the brush strokes and see that there was a human hand that made the work. And it's a medium that I'm really drawn to in just how it is this very direct process of there's the colors that I'm visualizing, and then I can put them through my arm, painting them onto the canvas. So it's a very direct process. And that's something that helps when I'm trying to express a lot of this emotional content in my work, by being able to feel that I can be in that moment, and sometimes it's the actual emotions that I'm feeling as I paint, and be able to present that through the physical act of painting.
Now, who are some of the artists that you draw inspiration from? Are there particular painters or artists that you learned about that you say you're kind of in a similar style or that have inspired you?
Well, when I started at college, I was looking a lot at some historical artists, specifically the German expressionists, such as Emil Nolde, and other expressionist artists like Edvard Munch, and everyone likes Vincent van Gogh. So those are artists that their use of brushstroke and color has been really influential in my work. And then I've also have a lot of contemporary artists that I'm drawn to, especially artists that deal with the human form. There's Dana Schutz, Lisa Sanditz, and Marlene Dumas, and artists who are dealing in different capacities with the human form, but also have that sense of both the physicality of painting. Another artist would be Rebecca Campbell, is another artist that just the way she layers paint has been very influential in my work.
So Claire, you are both an artist, that's your profession, and you also teach at the college, and you've been both really for quite a long time. How do you make that bridge between your professional work as an artist and what you bring to the classroom and to your students?
Well, it's a back and forth process. I actually learn a great deal from my students. It's not just that I'm teaching them. And I've always felt drawn to teaching art. I actually started teaching at college right after I graduated undergrad. I actually took for a semester, I taught at a community college in Michigan, at Alpena Community College. I was teaching philosophy courses, which is a whole other story. But then I went and I taught as a graduate assistant during grad school, and then started teaching. I taught at Eastern Connecticut State University, and then at Kutztown University of Pennsylvania before coming to Middlesex. And it's a wonderful experience working with students and just talking about art and talking to them about their either the formal qualities, looking at the properties of color, or talking about the principles of design, but also as they develop their own voice in their work, and being able to share with them my experiences as a working artist and how that can relate to what they're interested in doing. And just talking to them also about the nitty-gritty, about what they want to do in the future, and to be able to help them through that whole process of that transition into the workforce.
Well, that must be an incredibly satisfying experience as an artist to watch students actually find their voice and see them develop over the course of a semester or a year or more than that.
Yes, when I was teaching painting at Kutztown, I had the same students who I'd take for introduction to painting and then going into their painting studio upper level courses. And that was fun to see them, where you're teaching them a lot of the formal qualities of the medium, but then seeing them go off into all these different directions. And it's a great experience being able to help students and work with them.
Now, if you're teaching a studio course at a college level, especially at an introductory level, you may have students that have varying abilities. Are there ways that you can show a student who may be both more of a novice and one that may be more advanced how to draw out that voice? What kind of techniques do you use as an art teacher to do that in a studio-based course?
Well, I work a lot with students one-on-one in introductory courses. I'll have demonstrations. We also look at slides. It's nice to have them be connected to the greater art world. When I work with them one-on-one, to be able to talk about different qualities. I'm teaching a drawing one class right now. I may have one student that I'm talking to more about proportion and perspective, where another student's about variations in line thickness, or just trying to think about the overall composition. So that's something of trying to work with all the students individually to be able to let them develop at their own pace.
Okay. So as a part-time art professor here at the college, you do work with students, and I know in your previous positions you've worked with students who may have started at a community college and wanted to transfer to a university in a fine arts program. How does that process work? Someone like yourself who's done that yourself, what kind of advice would you give to a student, or how would you prepare them to go from a college like Middlesex to a university setting to major in fine arts?
Just today I was working with a couple of students who are interested in transferring and talking to them about how to develop their portfolio and looking at drawings and what art schools will be looking for. So they're just building up work, having both being able to look at some of the basic qualities of working with proportions and value, but then also being able to have some work that you develop fully if you have the art medium you're interested in, if you want to go into photography or going into painting. And when I've worked at different schools, I also work with students as they develop through the years how they can try to apply for exhibitions of their own work, helping them develop artist statements and the whole range of what you can do. It's important as, especially in academia, as an artist to both learn how to make art, but also learn how to talk about art and be able to verbalize about it. And that's something that's important for how you can, be able to transmit that information to other people, is having that skill as well. And that's something that I help students with, because that's something that's hard as visual artists to also learn how to be able to speak about your work.
Well, I think a lot of that lies in the passion that you have for your work and the passion for art and for the subjects that you are painting.
Yes, I believe that's the case.
So I would imagine that your ability to talk about art as an artist, but also perhaps even as a student, as you prepare to further your educational journey in art, must be founded on the passion that you have for being an artist and for the subjects that you portray in your work.
I think for all people who are interested in the arts, you're there because you want to be able to present the world in a new way. And that's what's great about the visual arts, is that you're looking at the world and you're switching the angle. It could be just the idea of making a three-dimensional still life into a two-dimensional drawing, but also just how we look at everything and just finding a new way to see the world. And that could be both in a psychological manner, emotional manner, a intellectual manner. And that's something that's very important about the arts. And it's important to everyone, whether or not you are pursuing art as a career or just as an interest or a hobby.
Okay. And making that connection, we talked about the paintings that are on display as part of your exhibit, Figurative Color, here at Middlesex. You did share that the subjects of these paintings are friends of yours or members of your family. What has their reaction been to the paintings?
Well, I hope positive. In general, it's something I think they in general like my work, and it's fun because it is something important to me. They're not portraits in the historical sense of just presenting a person, with their stuff around them looking really great. I'm not trying to make them look, not great, but it's something about trying to show some other aspect and something that becomes a little bit more universal. But I think I've had, in general, pretty good responses from those who have been my models.
Okay, that's great. So if our listeners wanted to find out more about your artwork and perhaps where you might have exhibits in the future, how can they find out more about you as an artist?
Well, I have a website, and it's my name, ClarissaRGerber.com. So it's ClarissarGerber, and this is ClarissaRGerber.com. That has my schedule of when I have exhibitions coming up. They're listed there. It also has a little bit more information about my art, my artist statement, and then examples of my work. And I have a show currently up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at the Banana Factory. It's closing soon, but that's a work that I have, and then there'll be more shows coming up in the future.
And of course, if you want to take a class with Clarissa, you can visit the college at mxcc.edu, find our course schedule, and see that she's teaching art appreciation and some studio art classes so they can actually see you as an artist, but also as their teacher. That would be fantastic.
That'd be great.
Thank you for joining us today, Claire, and we certainly invite you, our listeners, to come see in person the figurative color exhibit by Clarissa Gerber, which is on display in our Pegasus Gallery and the Niche. The Pegasus Gallery is here in the Chapman Hall building at our Middletown campus, so you're certainly invited to stop by our campus at any time to view the exhibit. Visit us in general at the college to learn more about all of our programs, both in Middletown, Meriden, a few shoreline courses, and online. So again, from Middlesex Community College, I'm Stephen Minkler, and thanks for joining us for Middlesex Moments.